Welcome to episode 206 of the Necronama.com. Throughout the month of October, author and editor Alex Woodroe is joining us as we take a deep dive into Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Today's episode is Lot 36. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And this month we are looking at 8 episodes of Del Toro's amazing Cabinet of Curiosities.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast. And I think you're underselling Guillermo del Toro and everybody who's associated with this project, man, because I've been waiting to talk about this, and now we finally get our chance.
That's right. And it's all thanks to our guest for the next 8 episodes. I'm so excited that you're here.
Alex Woodroe. It's not Thomas. It's not Thomas. We want to make it clear for anybody before they turn this off. It's not Thomas.
Yes, our friend Thomas has been here 49 times now, but not today. Alex Woodroe is here. Alex, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. How privileged am I to get to talk about this entire series? I love it so much. I love the fact that it exists so much.
I'm super excited. Every October, we do like a specific topic. Like one year, we were really insane, and we did 31 episodes of The Treehouse of Horror by The Simpsons and released an episode every single day, and we went insane in the process. We've done Universal Monsters, and now we're here doing this. I'm so excited because I hadn't seen this. It's been on my to-do list forever. And when you pitched it, I was like, oh, that's amazing. We should definitely do that. And now that I'm getting into it, I'm so utterly in love. So thank you for picking it.
Yeah, and I think my response when James, was telling me that this was going to be the plan, and then when he's talking to me about the episodes that he was watching, it was like, oh, that one's really good. Oh, you're going to love this one. And so we're just texting back and forth, and he's just giving his reaction. He's like, well, I'm not feeling. And then I get a text. It's like, oh my God, that was so cool what they did at this part. I'm like, see, told you, man. They're all well done.
And anyone who knows me well knows that I just constantly read spoilers. So I've known everything about every episode, and I'm still blown away by the production quality, the amazing effects, the storytelling, the dialogue, everything about it. But let me back up, Alex. Why don't you tell everybody a bit about yourself, your book, all the other stuff you have going on?
Absolutely. And I promise we are only going to do this once. So for everybody who's ready to binge this whole series, you're not going to have to hear me say this every single time. But I am Alex Woodroe. I just had my debut novel come out through Flame Tree Press. It's called Whisperwood. Yay. And there's a huge raging debate going on between whether it's dark fantasy or folk horror. And I'm just sitting back and enjoying that debate because I've been struggling with that question since I started the freaking thing. And it's just nice to have other people worry about it now. And Whisperwood is available wherever books are sold. Other than that, I'm the editor-in-chief of Tenebrous Press. And I work with a bunch of cool people, and we publish a bunch of cool books. And I encourage everybody, if I sound like the kind of person you want to support, go to tenebrouspress.com or go to alexwoodrow.com. And that is my spiel. Oh, yeah. Did I do okay?
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell everybody you do want to support her, so just go to those websites and make it happen. I'm a huge fan of Tenebrous. Anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I just constantly preach how great you guys are. And I'm not just blowing smoke with that at all. Obviously Danger Slater, one of my best friends. I loved his release from you guys, and Tim McGregor's Lure is one of my favorite books I've read in the last few years. And I know you have stuff I haven't even gotten to. You guys are up to 20 books now, something like that. So everybody will find something they like. Just go there, check it out, and grab Alex's book while you're at it.
I'm going to tell some secrets for a second, and this is not actually released anywhere, but Tenebrous has a really big couple of years coming up, because we are acquiring a line of novellas from somebody else, a line that's already existing. We are sort of incorporating somebody that I think people are going to love. We are starting a magazine over the next year. We have the first, the very first like 000 number of that magazine is our sort of anti-AI project, which is called Thank You for Joining the Algorithm. And then we're going to continue that into a regular magazine. And we, again, to tell secrets that nobody else knows, because why not? We're on a podcast and we get to spill the tea. We just booked somebody to branch into some really fun choose your own adventure horror books, which I'm so excited about.
That's awesome.
Because I love that stuff so much, and it's going to be really great. And the first one is going to be related to like the whole black metal music scene, and it's going to be so fun.
Nice.
And yeah, Tenebris has a big couple of years coming up, and I'm very excited for the future.
Well, that's fantastic. And
I'm looking forward to that because, I'm sorry, Jim.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, because I've tried to get my daughter into the Choose Your Own Adventure, because I found a couple of my old books and talked to her about it and said, it has to deal with critical thinking and decision making, all these things. Yeah. I said, you're really going to get a kick at it. So she's excited about getting those books and has picked up a couple of the ones that we found in a couple of places. But I'm really interested in picking up the horror ones for her to see if she will be a final girl or not.
And it's just cool to think of, this sort of format making a comeback, because it's the right time for it. We're all missing it now. So, maybe it's going to be, we are hoping, the opening act to us branching into more physical gaming stuff. So we will see. Here's hoping.
Beautiful. Nice. No, I was just going to say the only thing that could make this Cabinet of Curiosities even better would be an incorporation of Choose Your Own Adventure. Like, I would love to see what Del Toro could do with something like that.
Oh, goodness. Can you imagine his version of a Bandersnatch? I'd be terrified to even try to play that thing, but yes, I'm in.
It'll just be called All Your Choices Are Wrong.
Right.
Well, I mean, define wrong. You're going to suffer.
Exactly.
But that's not necessarily wrong.
But yeah, I would love to see that. That's all I was going to say before I tangented off and let Don go. So you did pick Cabinet of Curiosities. What is it that you love about this series so much?
So I think I do want to address one of the most important things for me, and I'm going to probably be repeating this every single episode, the fact that this series exists, whether people like it or not, whether they like every single episode or not, however many episodes they like or not. The fact that this series exists is important, and supporting it is so important, because I see this so much in the horror community. We are bitching all the time about how we don't have enough of this stuff. We don't have enough horror anthologies. We genuinely don't. And then something comes out and people spend most of their time complaining about how not every single episode was up to their expectations.
Right.
And I just want to scream at them, because I think, no, look, if you want more of something, just be happy for them, just endorse it and support it. And let's get a second season of this. Let's get somebody else to do another one. Let's get multiple people to do them, because there is so much room for horror anthology series and weird anthology series and just like dark stuff in general. Bring me back the Twilight Zone, bring me back all of this stuff. But if we want that, we have to support them right now when they're happening, whether or not we are the biggest fans of every single episode. So that's number one. I love that it exists. I love that there is a big name, possibly for some of us, the biggest of names, who is using what he achieved and what he received in order to promote others and give back to them and to the community. How rarely do we ever see that happening, right? It's not common. It's not even among writers. It doesn't happen very often that somebody who's made it to that level where people are going to follow you and listen to you and buy your product no matter what you do, to see them turning around and giving that space to other people, that is magnificent. It's the kind of person I want to be someday. So I really loved seeing that happening. And, the other thing I love about it is these introductions, like before you even get into any episode, Del Toro is there telling you about the person who was involved in creating it. How rarely are these people actually highlighted? Because of course they matter to us who are like super movie fanatics, and we look up credits and we check out who people are and we make connections of what else they did. But 99% of people don't actually do that. They don't necessarily look things up. And I'm not saying this as a complaint. It's just not something that they're interested in doing. So putting sort of those, background roles, like they're incredibly important, but to the audience, they're kind of background roles. Putting them right up front like that is so cool. And it sort of inspires, like, I think, that thing where you want to find out more about the person, right? You want to see what else they've done. You want to check out who did your favorite episode and watch everything else they've done. And kind of like it used to be in music before we got so hyper digitalized, when, I kind of used to look up a band and then look up all their favorite bands and then look up their record label and find out what they did. And I feel like putting these people in the front row, even before the episode starts, encourages that sort of behavior. Maybe I'm just being idealistic here.
No. You're right, because for the longest time, and I was one of those people that was guilty of it as well. If you told me when I was much younger, oh, this movie is written by so-and-so, my first thing is, okay, what was the thing that they did before? Because I was so disconnected to it. It wasn't something I thought about. Yeah. I was more, if, I don't know, Tom Hanks or Denzel Washington or Samuel Jackson or somebody's in the film, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to watch this. Right. Yeah. And it was kind of the same thing with movies where somebody's name is attached to it. And it's really, I'm going to give my name so these people get some attention. But yeah, that touch that you were saying, it's great because you now get that information beforehand by saying this is the person who's doing it. This is the vision, blah, blah, blah. And when you're satisfied with it by the end, because so much attention was put on that at the beginning, by the time you get to the end of the film, you are questioning, or the part of the series, you're then questioning like, oh, well, what has this other person done? Yeah. And then you see kind of that touch that they have with those films, where we know what a Tim Burton film looks like. We know what a Guillermo del Toro film looks like. We know what a Wes Anderson film looks like, where they've almost become memes where like, oh, let's do not a Christmas, like here's Forrest Gump if it had been directed by Tim Burton. Yeah. Or here's Pulp Fiction if it had been directed by Wes Anderson. Like the lighting changes, the way the characters look change. Like there's a pacing that's there to where you have an audience that can now be built off of. If you like this story, kind of like you used to, I mean, you probably still have it at libraries, where you'll have those signs where it's like, if you like this book, try this. Yep. And then you immediately are thrust into that person's world. You like their style, you like what they're doing. And it, like you said, with, looking at musicians and bands that they're in and bands that they worked with, a record label, then you start, assigning a certain identity to those publishing houses, or you start identifying a certain identity with those authors and people they collaborate with on a collection. I'm not a collection, on an anthology, to where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to read this person's stuff now because I like the mood, I like the table that they have set, and I'm ready to eat.
Yeah. And the magic of that is that when you start to experience art in that way, you are no longer dependent on the algorithm, which no matter how much we are told and sold that the algorithms are custom tailored to us, the ones that pitch us music on Spotify, the ones that pitch us the next video on YouTube, all of these algorithms, no matter how much we believe they are for us, they are never going to have that sort of openness of mind and independence of thought and, the specific thing that we are looking for that even we don't know how to express. And the moment you start to find all of these other ways that are outside of the algorithm it is so much more enriching, and it's a pain in the ass too. It's difficult, it's not as easy as letting the algorithm tell you what your next song should be. And I am absolutely not judging using these services. I'm on Spotify. I let it occasionally, I listen to its playlist for me to see what it suggests, and it's wonderful. But it is just one tool, and I always like to advocate not being dependent on just the one tool when you've got so many other options. And I think anthologies are so beautiful for that. Even those little figurines that he uses, the figurines at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like that's such a deliberate choice, because all of a sudden you're taking this concept and making it physical and showing people, it's no longer just a name. It's a thing in front of you that you can look at. And I feel like, especially if your brain retains images better, it just gives it even more of a feel of putting this piece of art right in front of you, with everything that entails, with who worked on it, with him telling you that short little brief like elevator pitch of what the story's about or what the vibes are. All of that together creates that sort of effect of making it concrete for you. And like you said, booksellers, librarians do that work for us a lot, and they're wonderful people. And he is definitely operating on that level doing this.
I love his narration at the beginning, or introduction, or whatever you want to call it. I think that it's so telling of his level of talent and creativity that he can take this thing that is very familiar to any of us who are into the anthology concept. We've seen Hitchcock do it. We've seen the Twilight Zone do it. We've seen whoever else, Crypt Keeper, all these different ways of doing it. And yet Del Toro comes in and made it completely his own. Like, it does not feel like he's doing a Hitchcock.
He's just being him.
Yeah, and I thought that it was just so beautiful. Like, it just sums up what I love about him, because it is this homage to what's come before, but it's still very much now, very much him. And I don't know how he conveyed basically everything I love about him just in these introductions. It's just fantastic.
It's a magic trick if you think about it. It's this balancing act between, here's in one hand, I'm going to give you comfort and familiarity. Right. I'm going to show you this vibe, this style that you're especially targeted at people like us, our generations. You're going to find it familiar and comforting, and you're going to want to sink right into it. And meanwhile, in this other hand, I've got all of this sneaky stuff, because actually these people who are doing the episodes are probably going to be mostly new to you. And they might have some really weird and different takes that you're not used to. And they might be saying things that you're not familiar with. But don't worry, because in this hand, I've got the air of familiarity. It is an absolute magic trick. And balancing that sort of, giving people comfort and at the same time pushing their boundaries is, the target for us when we were writing, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing. But it is so hard to achieve usually. And it's wonderful when it clicks.
There's even a kind of throwaway line in the first episode where the main character says, don't come at me with your creep show shit, or something to that effect. Right. and he directly mentions creep show, which we're all obviously probably in love with if we're watching this. But I thought it was so well done because it's this little nod to us, but it also fits the character. Like, it was just perfectly in there. And I thought that was just amazing how well that was done. But I guess when the director is one of Del Toro's frequent collaborators, and he's learned directly from the master and then made it his own as well. So it just keeps giving.
I mean, fair enough. This might be a good point to mention, since we are talking about how important it is to showcase the people who create the art, that the director is Guillermo Navarro, that the teleplay is written by Regina Corrado and Del Toro. I think they were in collaboration. That's, to anybody who doesn't know, Navarro worked on Pan's Labyrinth, I think Pacific Rim, some pretty big stuff.
Yep.
Regina Corrado, I think she even won an award for it, worked on Deadwood. So, while these are not exactly fresh names by any extent. They are very cool people that maybe a lot of people haven't been paying attention to yet, and probably should.
Mhm.
Oh, absolutely.
It is interesting though how it happens that within this series is the first time I hear some of my friends talking not just about their favorite episode, but also finally associating it with a director and saying, oh yeah, I love the Navarro or I love the Natali episode. And that's not something
Nice.
that happens super often with movies, right? Again, unless you're a movie buff, totally, absolutely. But for the average Joe, that's not something that they would naturally do. So clearly it does have an effect to put the director up front.
Yeah, I think that it gets in your mind and makes you associate it on that level, and I think that that's such a cool nod that he did that. And I definitely, I'm that person. I'm the person who normally doesn't care who directed it, or like I don't go see things just because a certain person did it. My exception might be James Wan, but everybody could probably just judge me from that right now. But outside of that, I'm just not that person. So it was kind of cool having it brought to the forefront and making me notice, even if it's only for a couple seconds.
Mhm.
Yeah. Speaking of the episode, I actually want to ask the two of you something that you're going to know probably a lot better than I do. So one of the first things I noticed in this episode was what was playing on TV at the start, right? There was this little intro of Bush, I think, talking about a new world order, right?
New World Order.
And it just immediately made me wonder, because I live in such a removed context from you guys. And I thought, obviously it ties into the theme, but why do this specific clip? Why use these specific words? Why talk about this specific moment? Is it, and this is just a really wild guess, is it a reminder? Are Americans forgetting? Because, I think for me over here, it feels hard to imagine it even being necessary to remind people that this happened, to remind people, of these moments in history, of the meaning of those words, of all of that. But I thought, what if this is, because we do risk forgetting this stuff? I don't know. What do you think about that intro?
Don, can I go first before you hit the history lesson here?
Oh my gosh. Such a horrible person. Go ahead.
I want to hit the writing point of view. The writing point of view in my mind is it totally sets the year and it sets the main character 100%. It shows that it's been going on for a couple of years, and it gives our main character, he's obviously gone to war and he's come back and he feels he's lost everything and that no one gives a shit about his sacrifice. Yeah. So just from the writing point of view, it sets the time period and gives you his background almost immediately. When you see him and you see that he's been in war and he's done these things, you know where he was, and from an American point of view, we know how many people were just kind of ignored when they came back, and how that set them off. So that's my writing point of view. Don, now you can destroy everything else.
No. I'm not going to destroy anything. It's but you also you get that as far as the timing. I mean, that's the most important thing to make that known, like this time period. So it doesn't make it too odd that this is a relatively young Nazi for what the time period difference would be if this were, 2022 when it comes out. You're talking about 46 years after the end of World War II. And you had a lot of people who were able to escape that had been part of a certain organization, certain group of people to other countries, including the United States. So you get that as far as like a guy who is looking to be forgotten, as far as like, I don't want to be remembered. I just want to fall, I want to fall through the cracks of society because I don't want people to really know the shit I was up to. Yeah. And then you have somebody who is unintentionally forgotten or feels as though he's been left behind because of Vietnam. Like I went there and I did this because what really got me was they immediately go to Nick's character, or you get this moment of Nick's character where he's in the car listening to right-wing radio. which again, it was strange that they had that tone with black rights and brown rights and whatever. So it's almost like a fast forward with that as well.
I do have just one small question about that radio specifically. I can't help but ask this. How real is that? Like, would you actually be able to find a radio station that says that? Oh my goodness, I would never.
Today, especially.
There is no chance I could ever tune into something where that is being said here. That is just absolutely would not happen.
That is very common. And once you get rid of like things like the fairness doctrine within the FCC, the Federal Communications Corporation, whatever the hell it's called, Commission, you could basically have whatever type of nonsense and you could lie as much as you wanted. You didn't have to provide an opposing viewpoint if you claim to be news, anything like that, which is why we have Fox News now.
And 91 was when Rush was coming up, right?
Yes. He was coming up in the 80s, but the 90s, and you already had Morton Downey Jr., who was very popular with television, with his sensationalism. You had shock jock radio. So you had a lot of things that were kind of preparing Americans to become further divided. But in the 90s, it really exploded. And you had a lot of right-wing radio, which led to Ruby Ridge, led to Waco, Oklahoma City, where you had people who were full-fledged, we're going to be separatists. And we don't want the government. We don't want, these people living next to us. But yeah, it was a very real thing. But when he's in that car, he's just like, yeah, right on. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like I'm hitting you over the head. Like, like this guy's not a nice person. He's an asshole.
And Alex, I would add that here in Phoenix, we have a radio station that's exactly like this. I'm not encouraging anyone to check it out. It's called The Patriot. And my buddy Vincent Cava, every single time he comes here, Vince listens to The Patriot and just tells me all the terrible things that are being said on there.
I would listen for a little bit.
My God.
I would listen as an issue of anthropology. Like, I want to understand what the fuck is going on, because that's not something that I would be able to hear. I'm not saying that people here can't be hateful or wrong on the radio. They absolutely can, but they would have to be more subtle and civilized about it. It's a little bit more rounded at the corners, and just the way it was presented in the movie, I thought there's no way that they could be using those exact words. And actually, you're telling me it's just 100% legit. That
100%, 100%.
Sure. What about in the 90s, Don? Was it quite to this level, or do you think that this is played up?
It was. I
didn't listen to it in the 90s, so I have no idea.
I didn't, but I went to school with other people who did listen to that type of stuff. So I would hear like, well, Rush Limbaugh was saying this, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, he's a piece of garbage. Like, he's a racist, sexist, homophobic piece of garbage. Like, playing. Oh God, he was a horrible human being. That's all. That's the only time I'm going to spend on him. But yeah, But you see how this guy feels like he's left behind, because even that comment that conversation he has with the guy who's working at the storage unit place, and he has this challenge where it's like, oh yeah, about race, blah blah blah. And he said, well, when I was in my unit, everybody was green, and I was thinking to myself, like, no, that's typically, like, for the most part, that is a white soldier's experience.
Yep.
When you go on the military, like, we're all brothers, we're all this. But if you hang around with Black, brown, and Asian soldiers, as well as indigenous, because you do have some that join. But when you hang around, especially with Black and brown soldiers, it's very clear, like, the white soldiers don't know anything about what's going on with the Black and brown soldiers as far as like racism and harassment. And if something comes up, it's simply like, no, this guy, this officer, this sergeant, this guy, he's just an asshole to everybody. But then you're like, no, like, he's like, well, we're all the same here. But like, no, let's have this conversation.
He did get told that in the episode out loud on screen. He got told, and that was such an important moment. He got told, no, you know what? The entire front line was Black. All of the bodies you people were stepping over were Black. And that was a big moment.
Yeah.
And I love that as much as he's an opinionated piece of shit, right, for most of this, for the whole thing, that is one moment where he did not have a reply. Like, there was no immediate quip there. That was a moment of just silently taking in something. So, it's debatable how much impact it would actually have on a real life person who has those beliefs. But on this fictional character, it did feel a little bit like he might have sort of understood something. Hopefully. Maybe, again, I'm just being way too idealistic. But I did love that he got told.
He takes a minute before he thinks about his response, which is because you're right. It's for a little bit, like his friend or his business associate makes a comment and he kind of walks off, and then he, after he's thought about it, he's like, "Oh yeah, we were all agreeing." I'm like, you completely missed what he was saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
You completely missed what he was saying.
Well, and I liked how it built.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, James.
I was just going to say, I like how it built up. When he's listening to the radio, you get the brown lives, black lives. What about white lives? Then when his associate talks about white anger, he goes, "Oh, can I talk about black anger? Didn't think, or white anger? Didn't think so." And so I like how it builds up to the part you guys are talking about, where then he stops for that second. It's it just feels like he's regurgitating points up until that point, and then when he's hit with something he hasn't heard, he doesn't know what to do.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know how to react, which is already like interesting, because we have experience of dealing with these people who have these beliefs, and it's not what you expect of them. They usually, whether they understand something or not, they will usually immediately react and just keep on their old patterns. So it was interesting to see a sort of different version, or maybe that's just been my experience. And I really loved that contrast of going from, this guy who is listening to this radio station, who is obviously a weirdo, racist. But then his first actual interaction in the episode is with a black man, and it's very business as usual for him, right? That's a contrast. The episode sets it up as this guy would probably do horrible things, and then on the other hand, he does have these interactions on the daily, and it is perfectly normal for him, and he's not well behaved by any extent, but he does have them. They exist in his life. So that was interesting to me. I really love how they set up that immediate contrast right at the start of the episode.
Well, and I was kind of thinking about how the associate that he knows, like, he has that pause you guys were talking about, and he actually sort of listens to him, whether it takes root or not. But with
because
Amelia,
he knows him.
Yes, because he knows him. And with Amelia, he doesn't know her.
Yeah.
So she's 100% the stereotype he expects instead of a person.
Yes. And he behaves like the stereotype we expect. He has those immediate, thoughtless reactions without any sort of pause or consideration or any sort of thing like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I mean, we know this. We've seen these exact people react in that way, where you have to sort of make it personal in order to make them listen. We have seen this happen. If you're trying to debate with people like that at all in your real life or on the internet, that making it personal is one of the unfortunate things that you have to sort of do in order to get them to perk their ears up. But it is neat to see it, right there on the screen in a way that's not, I just wish I could know if, bear with me here, if a person who is a sort of white supremacist type, maybe not as extreme as the main character, but going in that direction, right? If they're watching this episode, are they seeing the same things we are? Are they getting it, or do they just sort of see this guy who they identify with being mistreated by the people around him? I would love to know that. Not enough to want to have a full-blown conversation with any of them, but I would love to know how it looks like for them,
My guess would be they would identify, and then they would start screaming that it's too woke.
Do you think it does feel woke to them? Do you think the episode...
No, just by the conversation, though. I mean, I think that's the issue, is somebody would see that conversation happening, and they'd be like, "Oh, why'd they have to make it about this? You could have had a story that was about, I don't know. You could have made this story without the guy being a racist or acting as though he's. Why did you have to make this guy that?
I feel
Why can't we just get to the demon?
There's this thing going on where we are seeing a lot of writers, screenwriters, and book writers who are trying to sneak this stuff in a subtle way, and give the other side something to cling to in order to keep them watching and maybe open their minds a little bit. And I feel like that's sort of what's being done with this guy's backstory, with his whole veteran who has been abandoned by the government backstory. I don't know, because again, this is your culture and you're going to have to correct me on this one. But is that a sort of experience that a lot of people, even who are nationalists, would still identify with? That, we are not treating our veterans well enough, and after the war, they were abandoned and all of that?
All right. Here's what they do versus what they say. What happens typically with that group, and feel free to send your hate mail to James.
That's how it usually works, yeah.
Because I'm not going to read it. Here's what typically happens, and you're talking 30, 40 years of this. Conservative or conservatism will latch on to, we love veterans, right? So they can use them as an issue or a debate topic or include in a conversation if we say, hey, we should have universal health care. Well, we need to worry about these veterans that are on the street. And like, okay, let's do something about housing, and let's do something about the unhoused population.
They also need universal health care. Surprise.
But we need to take care of the veterans first. I'm like, okay, let's do both. No, veterans first. You're like, okay, let's do something for the veterans. And then those people that have been elected of a certain party then vote against stuff that is going to benefit veterans. Namely, we have a senator who's blocking all types of promotions for military personnel because he doesn't like the fact that if a woman gets an abortion, the military reimburses her for the travel expenses. So it's all that stuff. We need more money for schools. We have a house homeless veterans. Okay, then help them. Let's do something.
So what I'm hearing is that in reality, these people would not actually care about this subplot of the veteran who's been abandoned and who is lashing out because he feels, he's doing all these things because he has no other option. They wouldn't actually care about that. It's just a front, and it's not something that they would actually emotionally relate to.
They would care in the sense of, look at me. Look at me. I care about this guy. I said, thank you for your service. I bought him a drink or I did whatever. It's the look at me as opposed to advocate for. So those guys would definitely. Now, I'm not saying this is not an absolute. There are people who are going to do it,
of course,
and help out. But the vast majority, it's like, we love our troops. Okay. And now what? What are you gonna do? Nothing. I just want to tell you that I love you. And damn it, nobody better take a knee during the national anthem. And then you see a veteran taking a knee, and they're like, "Well, they're not a real American." Like, but you just said they were the best thing ever, but they did something.
And then they're like, "No, not that specific person." Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So from my point of view, as somebody who did not join the military, it feels like as long as you're actively shipped out, not even like sitting at a base somewhere, actively shipped out, then they love the idea of you because you're basically a tool or a weapon that they've sent to prove their manhood somewhere. And they don't give a shit about you before you sign up. They don't care about you after you're back. They don't want to help you in any way. And we only care about the ones who died. And it's always about the ones who died. And I'm not disparaging that so much as, from my point of view, it becomes this thing where they just promote the ones they don't have to do anything with.
Yeah.
So as long as we're only caring about the dead, we don't have to actively do anything for them. We can just go, no, people died for this, so you better not do that. And that's it. And it's so fucking weird.
Yeah, see,
I don't think that's exclusively American by any means either, but
no, of course not. Although I do think a lot of the countries here are maybe not as military focused. We definitely don't spend as much money on it and on promoting it. So maybe, it's not as strong an effect, which is why I was even asking these things. I just don't have the same perspective as you guys. So when I saw the episode, I thought, oh, maybe this is how the director, the writer, everybody involved, this is sort of an olive branch that they are throwing here. I'm going to give you this character that you'll relate to, and in exchange, you're going to listen to some things that are going to make you uncomfortable. And I was thinking, oh, that's kind of neat and cool, and I hope it works. If it works for even just one person, that would be awesome. But now
I do think that's fair.
I'm questioning whether that would work for anybody at this point.
I'm very jaded with where the world is these days. So my response is immediately based off of how they would react in a Facebook comment. So I go immediately to, oh, that's too woke and blah, blah, blah. But I do think that it's there and it could reach out to people. I'm fascinated by the writing of the character because they hit one of the biggest things that I see constantly, which is I'm not this bad because somebody's worse. So although he's clearly a racist, bigot, asshole, he pulls out these pictures of actual Nazis.
Right.
And oh, look how terrible they are. They don't have honor like I do. I am an individual who got the short shaft and they're terrible, terrible Nazis. And I thought that was such a cool thing to throw in there.
Yeah. That was a very interesting moment and deeply confusing to me on a fundamental level. But yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, even that whole scene where he's going through the photo album, right? I looked at that and I thought about the way I would react to it versus the way that he's reacting to it. It's immediately kind of like, huh, interesting. And I'm looking at it like, holy shit, that's gold. That is gold right there. The idea that there's a museum or a library that would benefit from this type of thing. And then also thinking about, okay, the guy who had this thing for 45 years, according to his friend, was a Nazi. So then you start thinking about like, oh my God, who else, was he associating with? And, how was he able to get here? So I'm thinking about all those questions and I don't see those questions in his head, as you pointed out, James. I don't see that pointed out. It becomes a thing on like, yeah, there are worse people than me.
Yeah. One of the more subtle things that I really, really enjoyed, there's this moment when he gets really pissed off and he says this line that basically goes, fuck you, fuck her, and fuck the guilt trip, or fuck this guilt trip, I think. And I really love that. And I thought, I'm so glad that this is happening on the screen right now, because that is how people like him react a lot of times when they're just starting to maybe have an inkling of feeling some feelings, like actually having some feelings coursing through their bodies,
right,
that might be close to being like guilt adjacent. It's so typical that somebody like that would react with immediate anger against the person who made them feel guilty. Like we see that all the time. I'm being harassed and attacked online for my ideas, and being immediately aggressive against the person who actually made you feel a little bit guilty for what you are doing, rather than have to deal with that guilt.
Right.
That's such a subtle little moment, and I loved it so much. I feel like a lot of his dialogue is peppered with these subtle little moments. Like I could go on for a couple of hours with just various lines of, oh, that's like, we experience that, we see that happening, that's a thing, that's very real.
No, I love that. The dialogue in this is so tight, like you said. It makes me jealous.
It is really. I want to quit writing levels of dialogue. Do you ever get that when you read something that's so good?
Oh, constantly.
I need to stop doing.
I throw the book down. I put my bookmark in. I throw it down. I'm like, oh
no. Fuck you, fuck this book, and fuck this inadequate I'm feeling.
Fuck this imposter syndrome this book just made me feel.
Oh man.
Now, I got to talk about Amelia because James and I before we started, I have a theory about Amelia. Before we get into the dealers and Roland's participation, and the fact that Nick doesn't even call him by his name; he calls him Hans, which I thought was hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
Hilariously xenophobic, I should say, as far as like, I don't give a shit about you, I give a shit about the money.
But it's complicated. Like, you're managing to be xenophobic against the people that technically you're on the
exactly.
You are ew.
But yeah, Amelia shows up and she's got, something that she wants out of the unit or one of the units that he has bought, and I'm convinced that Amelia is in on this because she knows what's there. Not fully like, oh, I'm going to drive you to find it, but just kind of like that satisfaction of, it's
she's got a feeling.
Yeah.
I wonder. That would be interesting if Amelia has a sort of inkling of what he's going to end up. But like, even if she doesn't know what he's going to end up being wrapped up in, at the very least, she's got to have a sort of feeling, like on a basic level, of you are a bad man and therefore bad things are going to happen to you. Because we do, like, we're human. You can't not see somebody like him and think, no, there's going to have to be some sort of payback for this. The universe is going to have to. So at least on that fundamental level, yeah, absolutely, there must be some sort of feeling in there.
So, I mean, especially that part where go ahead, James.
Oh, I was just going to say, in their interactions, you have where she tells him to rot in hell. And he's like, when you're in my country, insult me in my language or whatever. And that didn't bother me as much as a single word. When he looked at her and said, shoo. Oh my God. I was so fucking pissed about one word. And I was like, that sums so much up.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the point where I really want you to die. I mean, I know where we're going, but this is, there's no coming back now, asshole.
Well, it's that lack of treating somebody else like a human being, right? I mean, how hard would it have been for him to say, yeah, I'll give you a few minutes to go in there and see if you can find any of your stuff. Right? Not that it's already been confirmed. It used to be hers. She's not some random person off the street who followed along with, the auctioneer and decided like, oh, I'm going to try and scam somebody.
And like, it's been confirmed that he already sold whatever he was mostly going to sell.
Exactly.
Like, most of that stuff is sold. If there's anything left in there at all, it's just going to be stuff he wasn't really selling, in any sort of speed.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, the only reason he says no is principle. It's not practical in any sort of way.
Right.
He doesn't even give her a normal amount. He says $1,000 to come in and look.
Right? If he said $100, come on.
He could have said bad, 50 and made money,
I admit I had a really hard time from the moment that she was sent to talk to him. Because you already know who he is as a character at that point. You know what's going to happen. There is no doubt in my mind what's going to happen. As she is walking out there, I am already in absolute agony and struggling and hiding my face behind the blanket. I do that all the time, by the way, for like movies. And it's weird. I don't do that for horror movies, like jump scares or gore or anything like that. I have absolutely no reaction to that stuff. But whenever something is going to be like profoundly painful in that sort of awkward and hateful sense, that's when I do the thing where I have to hide my face behind my hands, or I'll put my blanket over my nose, or I just can't look until it's over. And I got that feeling so bad as she was walking towards him, because you just know what's going to happen. And it does. It just, word for word, that is exactly what ends up happening. And it is so terrible.
Well, I was like,
we haven't even gotten to the horror part of this episode, and there's so much horror already.
Well, I was like, this associate is an asshole, because he knows the kind of person Nick is, and he sent her out there to do this.
I was wondering, did he send her out because he doesn't care? But that doesn't seem in character. Did he send her out because he believes better of Nick than he actually is? Is that possible?
I think
I do.
that's the thing of like, if this woman had gone up to him and said, "Hey, this was my stuff, blah blah, blah. Can you please let me?" I think he believed that this guy has some redeeming quality to him.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. He believes on some level that there is a possibility that he might, come through. He just ends up disappointing.
Well, and
That's what I think
he even
too.
says that to Nick when he's fixing the flood. He's like, dude, just let her look at the pictures, like.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So yeah, I do think that he thought it would go better, but I'm like, you have to have known this guy well enough to know that it would not. I don't know.
I guess it's also sort of movie logic, right? There are certain things that we know because we are the audience, because we know we are
Sure.
watching a movie. So watching a movie, we knew it would end horribly. That was the only way it could have possibly gone, and there was no doubt. In real life, I can definitely understand, making an attempt because you believe that somebody can be better than their worst nature. Totally.
Yeah. Symbolism wise, I just want to hit something that has nothing to do with the rest of it does, but barely. The way they turn the lights on in the place, it's always on that timer. And if Nick would just take the time to spin it all the way around, he wouldn't have to go back constantly. But he's so stuck in his own ways that he won't even take the time. Like, I'll just make up numbers. Like, he puts it on like 10 minutes instead of 50, like just spin it a little more, buddy. And this would help you out a lot.
Oh gosh, I didn't even catch that at all. I thought, yeah, that's really frustrating. It reminds me of like when you're in those public toilets and stuff where it's on a motion sensor, but it will just go out in an instant if you're not moving, right? So it will go out in the worst possible freaking moments. You'll be washing your hands and just not flailing around enough, and poof, the light goes out. So it reminded me of that a lot, which of course is something I really love in horror films. But I didn't realize he was being like stubbornly set in his ways about it. That whole part just slipped by me.
Yeah, he just turned it to where the light came on.
Yeah.
He always just reaches over and like barely hits it. It's so weird.
That's so interesting. I didn't know. I've never seen one of those live. Like, I've never used one of those systems, so I didn't know how they work.
I don't know.
I've used it once or twice.
That's so characteristic. It was great.
It is. That's so cool.
Well, it is until the light goes off.
But see, talking about movies is so awesome. I catch so many things I never would have caught by myself. I'm too foreign.
No.
I should be insulting them in their own language. Sorry.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Especially Nick.
Oh man.
Okay, so he goes through the stuff. He goes through everything in the storage. I guess it's not a closet, but the storage unit. And starts coming across those things. He finds the candle holder, candelabra, finds the photo album, and then of course, which I love the way the effect worked, where he pulled the blanket or whatever it was back. The chairs were there, and then the tabletop just rolls. And, with that pentagram on it. And because the person that he typically goes to can't do anything, he's like, oh well, here's somebody else who might be able to hook you up. This is her name, blah blah blah. Go see her. And I love that character. Was Agatha. I love that character, and I love Roland as well, because it was clear at this point, or it should have been clear to Nick. But again, characters don't know what genre they're in. It should have been clear to Nick, like, you're dealing with some shit that doesn't need to be messed with. Because
but that was fun. It was clear to us, so we got to know before he did. So that is so much part of the fun of it.
But it was just awesome. I mean, she shows up. She's like, well, I can't do anything, but I know someone. I'm thinking to myself, like, I understand the and I guess that would be the other issue. He's so desperate for money because of who he owes money to, that he's willing to deal with whoever he can. Yeah. So you kind of can suspend that sense of, oh, I need to be worried about this. I'm already dealing with dangerous people. I've already dealt with dangerous situations. Okay, these are just some foreign, quote unquote, foreign weirdos that I have to deal with right now. And you said the magic word. This is worth a lot of money. I'm going to give you X amount of dollars for this, but there's a fourth book that needs to be found, and I will give you the money myself. because it's so valuable. But just the idea of, with the creep show shit, the idea that, hey, the fourth book is the one where you can bind a demon and do this. Again, you should be thinking like, okay, you're crackpots, but you're willing to pay a lot of money for this. Something tells me that you're just not average run-of-the-mill crackpots where it's like, hey, this is my magic quarter that always gives me luck at the casino. Something where you can look at it and say like, bullshit. You put belief into this thing where it can do something that it really can't. As opposed to, hey, we've got this thing. And especially when Roland says, oh, if you notice the red coloring, I get it. And as far as Nick's perspective, where he doesn't even want to hear about the details of this thing that could be important. All he cares about is the money. So, I mean,
to be fair, to Nick's credit, hear me out. I don't remember exactly what the number quoted was, but it was like 300 grand or something.
Yep.
Or am I misremembering?
No, it was 300.
So listen, just to be perfectly transparent here, for 300 grand, I will go with you and rifle through that storage locker naked. Well, literally, I don't even care. For 300 grand, you can have all of my grandmother's valuables, let alone somebody else's grandmother's valuables. That is a lot of money. And it does, this episode does also touch on, and it's not the only one. I think the next one does as well, very much more so on the things that poverty pushes you to do, on, the downward spiral that it is once you are stuck in that sort of poverty cycle. So I have no trouble at all. If anything, I found his reaction almost endearing and human, where he's, for the most part, he's like, you know what? I don't even care how weird you're being right now. Like, they're in the car and the dude is being so weird, like so profoundly weird. And it's like, just shut up. I don't care. I have a purpose and we are doing this and I'm going to make that money. And I got that on a profound level. That was the first time when I actually sort of related to Nick.
Well, I'm telling you right now, the 300 grand would get me interested. I mean, it would get me to do it, but I would still have some reservations where I'm like, this is kind of weird. But I don't know. I just feel like Nick had so many opportunities to not screw up, especially in those last 5 minutes.
I have met strange men in dark places for a date, let alone for 300 grand. Like, that is not even a question.
I mean, as far as like being in that building, and he's like, hey, these are the rules. Don't touch anything. Don't say anything. Don't do this. Yeah. But again, if you're paying me 300 grand, I'm keeping my mouth shut. I'm not even going in the room with you.
I mean, then you're already in it. So I think the further, the closer you get to the end, the further in you are, the harder it must be to pull out of something like that.
True.
Because you're always going to be expecting, I guess sort of in a weird way, this ties into the whole abuse psychology, right? You are in a situation that on some level, is scary and you don't want to be in. But the longer you're in it and the closer you feel like you're getting to some sort of outcome, even if it's not actually there or that outcome is actually really, really bad, but if you feel you might be getting close to some sort of positive outcome, the harder it is to just turn around and haul your ass out of it.
True.
So again, I didn't really have a problem suspending my disbelief for that one, so much as by then I was just, ready to embrace the inevitable of what we all knew was going to happen. For like the entire final third of the episode, we all knew where it was going.
Oh, yeah. I really think I would, as soon as that tunnel opens, I'd be like, I got to take some of this out to the truck. You go ahead.
Go ahead.
And,
maybe we should just tear down this wall and let the light in.
Yeah, maybe let's come back tomorrow during the day. Let's.
If you think about it, that whole fake wall that must have been made out of like gesso or like plaster or something, that can't have been like an iron wall. Let's just tear this down and see what there is to see.
It was just a room divider.
I feel like that's not keeping the demon out if it gets loose. It's
Okay, fair point. You probably can't just have a plaster wall there. That's a good point.
If a rat ran across and broke the circle, something like that.
Oh gosh, I have to ask you something. I feel like I missed something really important in this plot and I just couldn't find it and I couldn't figure it out. there's this whole section of them watching this videotape of the original owner who is doing this like ritual in order to get in, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating, and I was ready to explore more and hear more about that. And then we never do, right?
Right. That frustrated me.
Something.
So my take on it is that it's part of the ritual, and I have two theories on it, but I think one is dumb. So I'm going to start with the dumb one. The dumb one is that he knows the jumps across the circle to keep it intact, but I feel like
them.
But I feel like he doesn't need to do that. Like if that was the thing and he needed to get to the book all the time, wouldn't you just move the book up front? So I feel like that's a dumb answer. So I think it's just
move the book. Maybe it's part of the deal is that the book has to stay in that specific place. Maybe you can't move it.
It could be.
And also the guy, the original owner was pretty old, right? If I'm remembering correctly, like
absolutely
very old. So I could see an option where even just his memory is not as good as he wishes it were, and he practices something like that. I like this theory.
Or even his eyesight. But my other theory is just that if he's down there, okay, so he's cutting up these, what are they, like rabbits at the beginning? And he's obviously feeding them to the demon thing. So that would explain why he has to jump over the circle, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
But so let's say he's doing that because he doesn't want to give it another human sacrifice. So he's throwing these in there. Maybe spending that much time in there, the demon has an effect on him. So the jumping could be like a way to keep that binding, but also to kind of like invigorate your body and kind of bring you back to where you are instead of. But it seems so repetitious and exact.
As much because it's so specific. Like that's not just calisthenics. That's something. And I love your first theory. Actually, I love that sort of practical thing. Because there's so many reasons why he would practice those jumps, like you said, his memory, his eyesight, having to feed the demon. And speaking of that, the whole thing of, butchering the animal at the start of the episode, it just made me wonder, like, why do we always use somebody butchering an animal to signify this is going to be a horror movie, right? Most of us eat meat. That's not supposed to be a horrible scene to us. And yet you're never going to see a meet cute romance opening with a guy butchering a rabbit. That just does not happen.
Somebody make that. I will watch it.
I'm like, yep, that's what I'm going to do.
I mean, the movie Fresh might have. Oh, anyway. So, no. Couldn't resist. But yeah, no, as I was talking and thinking about it, it started making more sense that he would have to jump the circle. Like he's got it chained down.
Yeah.
Right.
He has the demon chained down. So that means he could go in there without fully worrying about it attacking him, because it can't, it doesn't seem to be able to attack him or anybody until the circle's broken by our idiot boy. Yeah. So, like, when you take into account that it's chained down and stuck in there, these jumps, maybe it is about getting over the circle, and maybe it's not even so much about getting to the book, like I originally said. Maybe it's getting close enough to the mouth hole thing to throw the little rabbits in there. You
can't just toss the chunks of rabbit across the room at it, because you are going to risk missing and erasing the circle. Like, that would be amazing. Sure, you cannot, right? But you can't just toss. I wish we could know whether we're reading more into it than is actually there, or we just fully correctly read what was happening.
Fully correctly.
That's so cool. I love it.
Just amazing.
I'm keeping this interpretation. I love it.
But
I think that's what it is. Because again, like Nick's friend pointed out, is that he does this every day. The same thing. When he enters, he does the motion. When he leaves, he does the motion. So I mean, it could be a combination of anything, where it's I'm protecting myself from breaking the circle, or it's I'm doing this as some form of reverence before I open this door, and then also some form of reverence when I'm leaving, because the Nazis were like big on the occult, occult, and I mean, it may be something that's wrapped up into that, where it's like I'm going into this area and I need to do things a certain way, the same way that some people will in different religious paths. I'm going to do this to cleanse my house, or I'm going to do this to, like, there are places in the South. I shouldn't say just in the South, but there are places, for the most part, throughout the American South, especially in small towns, where you don't sweep off your porch. Like, you sweep the house from the back to the front, and then you leave whatever you have on the front porch, because the belief or the superstition, whatever you want to call it, is that you are protecting your house from evil spirits from entering your home by putting all the stuff out on the front, because if the evil spirits come, they have to, for some reason, all evil spirits have OCD. They have to count all the things there.
Yeah.
And that stops them, because then they'll lose count and have to start over again, and they never enter your home.
Yep. That's actually, I mean, we do all of that stuff so much. You would think it shouldn't have tripped me up that he was doing it. We do that stuff. Religious people, they have to cross themselves every time they pass in front of a church here. Non-religious, people who are more into the spiritual folklore aspect, we will do the stupidest shit, honestly. We will spit in our bosoms for good luck and all of that. So technically, I shouldn't even have been looking for a meaning in his gestures. It's just that I'm so used to, in movies and in books, when you see something like that, it's rarely like in real life where somebody is just going to say, no, we just do that because we do it. There doesn't have to be a reason.
But that's sometimes the best reason, though.
Yeah.
That's sometimes the best reason. There is no reason.
I use that in Whisperwood a lot, the whole spitting in the bosom thing to ward off evil, which is something people here do. And like one of the characters, who's a foreigner, eventually, after a long time, goes to one of the other characters, listen, can you actually explain this to me? What does that do? And the other character just replies, it lightly dampens the tits, and there's no other reason. It's just what we do. That's all there is to it. So I should have been the first one to go, yeah, no, it's just what he does. But I guess I'm just so used to looking for answers in movies.
No, I really feel like the longer I've sat here, the more I'm convinced that it was my dumb answer of jumping over the circle.
Totally.
And Don actually made me 100% confident in this, because he reminded me he does it before he goes in. So it's not about the influence that the demon has in getting it off. So there you go.
Yep, I'm
Good
sorry
work,
to
Don.
say this, but it is your dumb answer. That's what it is. I'm certain.
Hey, that's what these discussions are about. It's not about dumb answers. It's about having a discussion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. How are we doing for time on this one, by the way?
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I was just thinking, like, before I get on the airplane, I put my right foot on before I get on.
Oh,
So
wow.
like I'll wait. Like for some reason I have to start with my right foot, and it's just a compulsion I have. And the same thing with like putting my shoes and socks on. It has to be my right foot. I cannot start with the left foot.
I think everybody has some level of superstition, whether we are aware that that's what it is or not. Every single person has it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, most definitely.
I even have like a pre-panel ritual, like, like things I do for myself before panels and things like that. Like, it's not even like something I think about. I just like do this same like order of things before I do stuff. I don't know. But can I just say, I would love to have this seance table. It is gorgeous.
It is, isn't it? I'm not sure I would love to have it in my house. I prefer to keep my immediate environment relatively demonic influence free if possible, but I would love to admire it from a great distance. Yes, I would love to visit your house with it in it. Totally.
So that would be one of those things where you have the
single
table.
And living alone by then.
Yeah, you're gonna have the table, and then somebody's gonna be, because that's the whole threat, right? Is that you would actually use it. But the idea that you would have it in your home, and if somebody came over, like I'm thinking about any one of us who would go over, oh man, let me try this out, and you just end up summoning something.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're using it. If you've got it on hand, you are using it. I do not know. I don't know if I can believe that people have the sort of willpower to never, not in their darkest moments, not when they get drunk, not at any point, actually just go, you know what, fuck it, and do that.
I would be like day one, so I'll fully admit it. But,
you're not even trying to hold out.
No. But it's funny because I have other things where I do, like, Don, you probably know this story, but there's this suit in my house.
Yeah.
And when I moved in, when you walk in the front door, there's a closet directly to the left. Okay. And in that closet, there is a full 3-piece suit that just hangs at the back of the closet. And in painter's tape, they slapped painter's tape on it and they wrote, "This came with the house. It stays here."
Whoa.
And I have lived here for 12 years. We've never touched the suit. We've never done anything with the suit.
I wouldn't. No.
When we leave, I asked my wife once what would happen if we got to the new place and the suit was in the closet, like if we moved. And she was like, "I would divorce you because I would know that you did it." But no, so the first short film that I ever had made is based on that suit and what would happen if you touched it. And yeah, so that's a weird superstition I have. It's probably absolutely nothing. It's probably like they were like, "I don't want to fucking deal with this. Just leave it here," Or maybe it's a good prank.
That was somebody's wife who said, "I know that you have an obsession with this fucking suit, so help me God if you bring it with us to the new." No, Timothy, listen to me. This suit came with the house. It is staying here.
James, how does she know the name of the guy who used to live in your house?
Whoa, that's weird. But no, but so I say that I would use the seance table right away, but all evidence to the contrary with my 12-year-old suit. So
yeah, that's fair.
All right, I have to ask this question before we move on to the rest of this and then go.
Sure.
If you did have the table and you had to summon someone or something, what or who would it be?
Oh, man.
Oh, gosh. I mean, total transparency to me, like I can force an answer, but there's just not a universe in which I would ever do that. Like, you've got to understand the context. I am around this sort of shit. I am in rural Transylvania. I am around some shit, right?
Yeah.
I know better. I do not fuck with things. I do not touch things. I know better than to mess with stuff like that. I have walked out of a vacation cabin because I had a bad feeling and I heard footsteps, and I just wrap my shit up and leave in the middle of the night. I do not fuck around. So there's just no universe in which I would touch something like that. And I talk about this all the time with the people around here, and most of us have this sort of ingrained feeling of, yeah, it's probably not real, but I'm not going to be the person to find out for sure.
Exactly. You don't want to
I'm just not. I'm fine. Somebody else can do it. I'm no. Absolutely not. Because if you are wrong, if the 1% chance happens and you are wrong about it in your belief that it's not actually real and it's just for fun, if you are wrong, the outcome can only be horrific. So you are just gambling a slot machine. You're pulling the lever of a slot machine that's just spitting out like venomous spiders. That's it. There is no winning that game. No, I'm good.
I love it.
Doing it.
So as the resident white cis male, I'll say that I definitely would, because I assume that something will go horribly wrong in my life either way. But I would probably contact my father, but I feel like that's the sort of thing where, like, if all of this is real, some evil entity is probably going to be like, "Hello, I'm your father." You know what I mean? And so I don't know. At the same time, like, if I would do it, because I would probably think it's not really going to work. So I'm going to say I would summon Danger Slater, because he would be so fucking confused.
He's still alive, and we just haul his ass over to wherever we are just to ask him a question.
Can you imagine? He's just taking a nap, so we kidnap him and put him on a seance table, convince him that he died. Good times. I hope he doesn't listen to this. It'll really ruin the prank.
All right, I'll bring the table to San Diego.
All right, so Don, your family's all about voodoo and hoodoo and good stuff like that. Do seances is that part of all that? Is that
now?
I don't know enough, so I have no idea.
Let me clarify here, James, since you're throwing me down a road.
Would I do that? Would I purposely mislead people?
There is a history of it in my family, but the whole talking to spirits and stuff. I mean, I'm very limited with my knowledge of it. But I will say with my mother's side of the family, their first thing is like, don't summon things. You don't fuck with the dead. Like, don't. No. We don't play with Ouija boards. We don't play with tarot cards. We don't do seances. It's not going to happen.
Yes. Listen to that advice.
So that's my mom's side of it. Like, even if we're watching a movie, she's like, "Oh my God, put the fucking thing down. Why are you doing?" Yes, and I'm sitting there like, Mom, just let it go. Let it go, Mom. We need to see this out.
Oh my gosh. I want to watch a horror movie with her now so badly.
Oh, everybody does.
I am exactly the same.
Everybody.
Don, can you bring her to San Diego? We could make so much money just having everybody like in a theater. We'll give her a mic.
Guarantee you. I guarantee you. If things work out, I will fly my mom out there to San Diego. If things work out the way I'm planning, I will fly her out there and we will have a screening of. There are going to be some people who have hurt feelings because she's going to completely trash whatever movie they love, or she's going to make
She has a right to.
Like, she's going to make a lot of, like, she did not like Train to Busan, and when we were watching it, she's like, this movie, and it wasn't like, oh, this movie sucks. It was like, oh, this is really unbelievable. This would not happen this way. And then she gets mad. She's like, "Why the fuck are you getting off the train? Get back on the train!" Girl, stay in the bathroom. Stay in the bathroom. Don't get out of the bathroom. Stay there. Everything will be fine. Did this woman just sacrifice herself for her? I love my sister, but God damn it, if she's a zombie, I'm not saving her.
Yes, she's right. Oh my gosh, she's me. I love her. I love her so much already. Yes.
She won't let me live stream when she watches movies with us. But I guarantee you, if I'm like, all right, Mom, like, I just don't tell her, Mom, here's what's going to happen. We're going to a screening, and I just mic her. And like, here, this is actually to give you a better ambient sound. She's like, this looks like a microphone. It kind of does. The technology's not that great, but, just go with it. And then everybody else just has like the audio track of her saying like,
oh yeah, we've all seen the movie. We're not there for the movie.
And then she'll pick up her phone 5 minutes into it. I'm watching a movie. Can you please call me? Oh my God, what the hell do you want? Like I laugh so hard when I watch movies with her. Like I want her to move in just so we can watch horror movies every night.
Oh man.
But if let's say whenever that I would have a seance for my mom, like if and when that day comes, because it'd be like, you know what, let's just watch a movie together. But my real answer to James's question is there are family members of mine that would not hesitate on my father's side. They would not hesitate to do it because it's like, oh, I need that recipe.
Oh,
it would be things like it would be my grandmother on my grandmother on my father's side, or my great grandmother. Can you please
write that short story? I'm so down with it. I want a short story of a seance for some recipe.
They're not even looking for like buried treasure. No, biscuits.
There we go. Grandma.
I told you it was 2/3 of a teaspoon.
I love that. I was just gonna say it though. You do realize that if you ever, in some distant future, if you ever seanced your mom, the first thing she would do would be chew you a new asshole for seancing her. Like that is the first
she'd probably hang up on me.
The first words out of her mouth would be, "Why are you doing? Why did you do this?"
I can imagine the waiting room for the seance where it's kind of like, all right, Glenda, apparently you're being summoned by your granddaughter, apparently. and it would just be me getting my daughter to do it just so I could ask her a question. It's like,
she'd show up and be like, "Oh, you're here,
Ma." It's like, I thought my grandchild was calling me. Yeah, I had her start the call so I could ask you a question. What was that TV show you used to watch all the time and used to kick me out of the room? Remington Steele. Oh yeah. Okay, thanks. I wasn't sure. I just wanted to answer. I wanted to tell somebody the correct story. So you get a punch card. You get a punch card for so many seances. Oh my gosh! All right.
Seances in your Google.
All right. So Nick again. He breaks these rules, which again leads to the demise. where it's I mean, you can look at it as the greed, the sense of urgency, the disrespect to the culture, or the lore, or anything like that. Because even going to the spot with Roland, who he refers to as Hans, he's dismissive of it. He's like, I don't care, just give me my money, I don't care, this is all bullshit, blah blah. But then you see the demon bound on the floor in this circle. And the book is to the side, and I believe, weren't there still candles or something in the room, or a torch, or there was stuff that was still lit in the room. So I'm immediately thinking, all right, Hans, you go get the book, I'll wait here.
No kidding, dude.
But it's his attitude and his disrespect for so many things, and just I guess the cultural blindness that goes on with it as well. We're just kind of like, nah, we've been here long enough, I'm gonna go get the book.
Whatever's happening here is none of my business. This isn't my backyard, so it's not my problem.
Exactly. And again, you think about not even with the situation with the demon, but there's so many situations that people find themselves in that could have easily been alleviated by just listen.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not that urgent. Like you need the money tomorrow. The guy's going to write you a check. I mean, it's late evening. He's going to write you the check. You don't necessarily need to go cash that check, but cash that check, but you can deposit the check that next morning, take the money out, and then go pay the guy you owe the money to. I don't think it was going to be that much of a life or death situation, because they didn't break an arm. They just hit him over the head and busted his windows. Obviously, these bookies are not that serious. They would have caused real pain to him if they were, if they wanted their money.
You could probably get another solid week out of them, realistically.
At least. I have a theory that Roland was never going to pay him. And I believe that Roland is the one who unleashed the demon to begin with. And I think that he's another brother.
Okay.
So this is my theory. He unleashed the demon, and then he was going to sacrifice the old man when he was much younger. The old man somehow won this and then kept her chained up and put the circle around her. And that's why it was never completed. And that's why Roland's entire thing is finding this book so that he can finish what he's doing. Because this old man does not live in a mansion. He doesn't seem to have a lot of great shit going on. And he has had to devote his entire life to chopping up rabbits, jumping around, and feeding this damn thing every day. And then he's so terrified of it. He's so terrified of it, he closes it up every time.
Yeah.
So every time that this guy goes in, he has to move all this shit twice and feed it. So I don't believe that the old man did this, because I don't think that he would have gone through all this just to keep it chained up and devote his life to it. So I think Roland did it. Roland gets the book, and his plan is to feed Nick to it to finish the sacrifice. That's what I think is happening here.
Yeah, I see your point. And not just Roland, but maybe Agatha as well.
Maybe.
Because their relationship is never defined as far as, whether they're friends, whether they're partners, whether they're relatives.
There's definitely a whole unexplored narrative going on where something had gone wrong, and he even says as much that the last book, was it third or fourth, would only actually physically still exist if something was incomplete, right? So that's definitely a hint at a greater story that we never really get to hear. Because if all we wanted was a demon tied up in a circle, we didn't need to have that. It could have just been, you keep it tied there, and every month you get gold bullions out of it if you keep it tied there, and the old man was living off riches. It could have been a lot simpler, but instead we got this whole thing where something had to be incomplete. It was there because something went wrong. The last book was it still existed because something still had to happen, and somehow the old man was not doing it or actively preventing other people from doing it. So there is definitely a whole thing back there. I never got as far as you did, as actually connecting the dots of what it might be. And I like this interpretation. I don't know if it is what the writers intended, but yeah, there's definitely something back there.
I just get this weird thing of how would I have written this? And that's where I would go. So.
So now I want to go rewatch it with that perspective of Roland has done this, and he just didn't know where it was because,
or he just couldn't get to it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
impressive.
But it makes sense to me of why he would go so big on the money, right? Like it's you have to take this deal, as we've talked about.
right.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
it definitely hints that it's not actually going to happen. We all know. It's just that we're probably thinking it's not going to happen because we all know something bad is going to happen and they're going to die.
Yep.
But yeah, the movie definitely does sort of telegraph to you that, look, this is a ridiculous amount of money. Nothing that good ever happens to people just randomly. Nobody just has that fall out of the sky for them.
Right. Plus, if it's only going to bring in 300,000 at the auction, like he claims, you're not going to give the full 300,000 to this guy.
Yeah.
You'd give him 100,000, or you'd give him 50,000. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
and that was what I was saying about he should have been suspicious because of that. The idea that he wants it. It's, he gives him that number talking about this is what it'll get in auction, but I will go ahead and pay you that. The aspect that he wants it.
Exactly.
And there's no negotiation. It's not like, well, you told me at auction it would be 3, so why don't you, if you're going to give me 3, why don't you just give me 350?
Or on the other hand, it's not him going, oh, you know what, at the auction it's going to get 3, so I'll only give you 1.5 and we'll split it halfway.
Yeah. Right.
Which it should have happened. Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
So then I just want to say this creature design is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I liked it when it's chained up on the floor. I thought it was cool. But when it's unleashed running through the halls, so beautiful.
That's the moment. That's
well, that and the combination with the lighting really does it for me.
Yes.
And it's really not what you expect it to do, right? Because you expect, a demon is unleashed, so what's the next? Possession, something spiritual, something ethereal. And instead, having a creature physically chase you down like that's not usually what you get from demons so much as, cryptids, which is super interesting to me. I love that it just, you know what, I'm going to get up and haul ass and eat this motherfucker. I'm not after his immortal soul. I couldn't care less. I want to sink my teeth into these nice thighs.
I'm hungry.
Yeah. I really love that about it.
And I love that it's not super fast. It doesn't know every turn. It's not like, it buys time for the moment with Amelia at the end. And I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, again, there's that sort of organic, sort of cryptid feel about it. Like it's almost just an animal. The way it moves, the way it behaves, it doesn't know anything supernaturally. It doesn't do anything supernatural. More or less, it is just an animal. That was so fascinating to me. I love that choice probably more than I would have any of the alternatives.
And then we get Amelia locking the door. He's yelling for help. Nick needs out.
Yeah.
For some reason, this storage space is created in a way where the lock is on the outside. But outside of that, I love that we get this moment where he's freaking out and she just stares at him and locks the door.
I really wonder how many people see that moment and feel sorry for him. How many are cheering? How many just don't know how to feel?
I was the one who was like, I didn't see anything.
Well, and her locking the door is symbolic because it's already locked. He can't get out. Like, we've already established that. So it's not really her locking him in. But Dawn and I were talking about it before the show, and I said that I think if she had known about the monster, she might have still saved him, not because she cares about him, but so that she doesn't have that on her soul.
I think so too. I think it's all the more beautiful that she doesn't realize, there's no way she actually fully knows what she's doing. What she thinks she's doing is inconveniencing him. Right? That's all she thinks she's doing. She thinks she's locking the bastard in there for a night that he's going to spend in there in the cold to think about what an asshole he is. Right? And I think that sort of makes it all the more beautiful. And if anything, kind of allows you to enjoy it, even if normally you'd feel a little bit iffy about locking anybody into that place with that creature. But it's like, she doesn't really know exactly that that's what's happening. I don't think so.
I disagree to an extent. Now, I don't mean as far as like she fully know. I think it's a cool theory to think like, oh, she knew everything that was going on there. She knew the previous owner, or
She
whatever,
might.
right?
She's just hanging out there.
Maybe.
Well, she was at that place for what, the entire day, if not 2 days.
Yeah,
just going around.
That's weird. So
and that's why I was thinking like, well, she has to know more than she knows, or she's waiting for an opportunity to, because she never has an opportunity where it's like, oh, please let me plead with you again to get my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just simply like, in the background, or or just a little bit away, and he does the whole shoe thing. But I feel as though she knows something bad is happening inside that place. And when he asked for her help, it's kind of like, no, you weren't willing to help me. I'm not willing to help you. Especially when she goes back, or you go back and think about the way that she reacts to him, where what she says in Spanish is, what kind of man are you?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of person are you? But then when he asks, he's like, what did you just say? He's like, I hope you go, burn in hell, or whatever it was. Right. So she switches it when she says it in English, which is very remarkable, where it's an insult on his identity, his capacity as what you'd identify as a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of man are you? Which that leaves you in so many different, directions, right?
Nice.
You're dishonest, you're cold, you're callous, you're bigoted, you got all these things. Like, what kind of person are you? Which, again, even the way the question gets structured can go in different directions, as far as like, you need to figure it out. But the fact that she then says like, oh, I hope you burn in hell, is kind of a sweet insult from a quote unquote little old lady, is the way that she's kind of presented. Because knowing my mother-in-law, my suegra, I know if she said, oh, I hope they burn in hell, I'm like, oh shit, that's serious.
Yeah.
That's serious. Like,
that's
a devout Catholic woman to say something like that about somebody.
That's the thing. It's not the same as me saying it. It wouldn't have the same sort of impact at all. Like, you have to know what it would mean for this person. My grandmother is the same. Like, if she's saying that, she literally means it. Like, she is genuinely okay with the prospect that you will be for eternity in suffering, genuinely 100% literally. And it really changes when you put it into that perspective.
And I think for her, because she's seeing that this man is dismissive, he's all those things, right?
Yep.
As far as being this cold human being who doesn't seem to have any empathy or sympathy for somebody else, or at least in her sense, not for her. And what she's asking for photos and letters, like, and you think about how important those are for somebody who has lost family members. Because one of the first things, at least for the longest time, because now everything is in the cloud, but one of the things that people would save, aside from their family or a pet, would be pictures, right? Those mementos out of the house if your house caught on fire. And the fact that she's denied this, and of course the time period that this segment is supposed to be taking place, it's the early 90s. You're not dealing with digital photos. You're not dealing with the internet that's easily accessible by everybody.
That's all she has.
You're dealing with those physical representations that remain of your family members, of your loved ones. And the fact that this guy has denied that to her is so insulting. It's so dehumanizing that I feel, again, this is me, I feel as though she sees this demon behind him and is like, oh, he's getting punished.
Yeah, this is fair.
Like, so it's not even an issue of I'm going to feel guilty about it. It's like, there's a demon behind you. You're being punished. This is the way it's supposed to be. And just that chef's kiss of, she holds the lock up, the busted lock, and then puts it on the door. I love that touch, because she's not assigning death to him. It's just
accepting what
I'm not
has
gonna
been
help you.
assigned. Yeah.
I'm not going to help you.
It's just embracing what the universe assigns to him. It's fun that you mentioned that the pictures, because if you think about it, that is a sort of hell to many people. I think it's having something that is so important to you, so absolutely monumental to your life and the people that you love, and just so huge, be an insignificant mosquito to somebody else's day, that they
Right.
can't even be bothered to not even make a sacrifice, just take one step to the left to protect, like nothing, not even the smallest, something that would be a bullshit gesture to them. And in relation to how enormous that is to you, like that is a version of hell right there, just having to live through that for eternity. So I feel like, yeah, you're right. Her saying, go to hell, I hope you rot in hell. Yeah. It's just, if anything.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah, I forget how irreplaceable those things were. You know, like now all my photos are downloaded to some cloud, and you know, if I lose my phone, I still have access, and
it's easy for us to
kind of
forget
shit.
now.
Like, yeah,
when you think about it, to her, it may as well also have been her family history, her immigration history, how they got into that country, how many of them passed away and are not even there anymore. You know, people that she's never going to speak to again, whose only memory exists maybe in one of those family photos. Yeah, there's a lot in there.
Plus, if you throw in the cultural connection, the idea as far as if you don't have those mementos, if you don't remember the people that have passed on, they go into the void.
Yeah.
So the idea that culturally, at least for those who practice, things like for All Saints Day or Dia de los Muertos, the idea that if they are forgotten, they completely disappear from the experience.
That's another sort of way of condemning somebody to hell, isn't it? To a version of hell is just having them be forgotten.
Oh,
wow.
Well, I would be remiss. I don't have too many more notes, but I do want to include this because if I don't, I'm going to feel guilty. George Carlin summed this up as far as the way that life works. Life is just moving boxes. So, you know, it's a phase of boxes. Like, you know, you're put into your bassinet as a box, right? Then you've got a home. Your home is just nothing more than a box. When you go from place to place, you're taking stuff in boxes. And if you have too much stuff, you then put those boxes in another box, which is a storage unit. And when you're ultimately dead, you're put in, for the most part, a box and either moving boxes or moving into different boxes. Which is really good because the second episode takes place in the cemetery.
Perfect.
We go from the storage unit to
the other storage unit.
Yeah. The final storage unit in some cases.
This concludes another episode of the Necronama.com. Join us next time when we look at Cabinet of Curiosities, Episode 2, The Graveyard Rats.